I'm at a point where this kind of just needs to be addressed. Routinely, I have jobs that I think, you know what, I should probably have started this from the beginning to bring you guys along. This was one of them, and it wasn't so much the uniqueness of the failure. It was a little bit more about the dynamic between the customer who owns the vehicle, the service advisor, and the technician. So, good morning, everyone. It's 100 Tech again with another diabolical video. So, diabolical, I say, because I'm a little bit irritated this morning. This 2005 CRV came in a couple of days ago with a complaint that after 30 minutes of driving, the check engine light would come on. And here's where I am stuck with very little information. Apparently what was happening, the light would come on, no inclination as to whether or not there was any drivability issues or anything. 3 diagnostic trouble codes were stored in memory. One of them was a misfire, cylinder number 4. And if you've seen any of my, I have a series of videos regards to misfires and how to quickly kind of isolate what your problem is. I took the coil and the plug out of 4, put the plug in 3, and put the coil over there in 1. Now, a note to add here is that the coils were aftermarket, and actually they were mismatched. So, at some point, don't know if somebody had been tracing a problem. Needless to say, it's one of those things that any technician who's been doing this for a while, you can tell when somebody's been around. There are telltale signs of, you know, stuff like this. You know, the zip tie here. Don't know if you can see down here. There is a bracket, okay, that this harness goes to. See if I can get it in focus. It's a bracket right there. It's supposed to be bolted to the throttle body. It's not. And there's several examples. Needless to say, I went back to the writer once I pulled these 3 diagnostic trouble codes. It was P30, P0304, P0011, and P2646, okay? So the misfire code is 304. The 0011, there's a variable, an adjustable cam sprocket here, okay? And the system that governs it had a fault. It wasn't descriptive yet, it just said there's a failure in that system. And then we had a VTEC system fault. The 2646 is rocker shaft switch stuck off, I think, or stuck on. Needless to say, usually you can have those problems with low oil. There was fresh oil in the engine. So little clues like that made me go ask the writer to ask the customer, has any engine work recently been done? You know, we can go from there with the diagnosis. They'll say, look, we may be looking for issues from there. Now, here is my problem with this. I do not know if he asked the customer. He came back and said, the customer said no. And I had to go with that because the vehicle, believe it or not, has 327,000 miles on it. As I ramble and rave here, so here's what I decided to do. I've already swapped out the coils and spark plugs because if there is an ignition system failure, I want to catch it. But because the VTEC and the VTC systems deal with air-fuel ratio mixing, it's very possible to get a misfire while they malfunction in transition from working to failing to being put in standby. So I wasn't too worried about the misfire, and lo and behold, after I did the swap, there were no misfire counts. So I decided, okay, let's look at these two. Since there was no definitive failure for the VTC, but there was a definitive failure for the VTEC, the switch was stuck. The VTEC solenoid switch assembly is back here, and I have this this gauge adapter plugged into it. But the block, if I can get you back there, I don't know if I can. This is on top of it. Okay, so that thing there, it looks like this. I have the old one here, something like this. Alright, so it looks like this. Alright, now this isn't the one from this engine, but when I took the old one off, this little screen down here, this little mesh, was clogged with debris. Okay, like lead, residual, RTV, and some stuff. So I showed it to him and I said, hey, if this is in the engine, we're going to keep having this problem because those little fine particles can get into the switch. Which looks something like this. It's a pressure switch, okay? There's a fine little hole if it would focus, so I can get it to focus. don't know if I can get the focus, but that hole right there, if debris gets in it, the switching mechanism can get stuck on or off. And, you know, don't know where this engine came from, debris this car, you know, 320,000 miles, it's 13 years old. Kind of hard to get information, so I decided to do a confirmation test. We put this gauge assembly here because my concern is, he claims that it happens after 30 minutes of driving, that you know have a problem. So basically that switch on the top is supposed to confirm that oil pressure has been diverted to the VTEC system, and that switch confirms it to the computer once it's commanded the solenoid on. So what do? I decide to confirm oil pressure, and I did that. There was oil pressure, so I said let it run for 30 minutes and check it again. Let it run for 30 minutes, still had oil pressure. So it might take a little longer, but then I started to think. The oil supply for these systems comes from the oil pump, and I don't know the condition of the screen down there. Okay, so now we could have an issue where as it warms up, the pickup screen at the bottom could start, you know, it could already be partially clogged. The warmth and more debris being sucked through it could clog it over. We could be losing oil pressure across the engine. So I tell them, I said, hey, look, if there's debris in this motor, you need to let the customer know we'll have these problems. The customer comes back the very next day, which was yesterday. So I decided to tell her, I say, hey, listen, I need to check some more. The VTC system that we had a problem with, the variable timing control, it has a plate, okay? Now, let me get some light here so you guys can see it. So you have a power steering pump here, and then the serpentine belt tensioner. I took that off, it's over there. But so in this area right here will be a pump and a tensioner, and right behind it, you see that little orifice there? Okay, so that's a passageway for the oil going to the VTC. Now, there's a screen in there. I want to see if I can get enough light there to show you guys how that looks. There's something else I should probably do, but right next to it, what a new screen looks like. Okay, at this juncture I just stopped, and I'm beginning to wonder. I asked the right question in the beginning. My advisor failed to get me the right information. Now, there are several of you advisors out there. I've known several very excellent ones. Okay, there is a problem when you think that your job is to sell work to the customer and to get the technician paid. That's not your job description. And I'm saying this because I had a conversation with the writer to find out what he thought the dynamic between technician and advisor is. Your job description is to get the information, as much of the information about the vehicle and the customer's driving habits to the technician as possible, so that he can use that information together with what he can deduce and find out from the vehicle to solve an issue or keep it in the best running condition whatsoever. Now, if the customer decides to not be truthful or forthcoming or doesn't even know, that's different. But I get the impression now that after multiple attempts of him getting, this is a waste of time and money. Because had I known that this motor had been replaced or major engine work done from the get-go, we wouldn't be here. I would have told him, hey, here's what we do. You need to do a lot of oil changes, right? Get most of this gunk out of the car. Then we could go back in here, change these screens, and then do some more flushes, you know. At 327,000 miles, is it even worth it, you know? But here's what's gonna happen today. I'm gonna put this screen on. Now, I don't know what the screen in the pickup assembly in the oil pan looks like, but at this point, at 327,000 miles, it is not fiscally responsible to put this kind of money into a 13-year-old. I mean, it'd be one thing if it was a classic. If there's sentimental value, maybe. And here's the thing: down here is the way down there on some ledge on the block is the serial number to this motor. And when they are put together at the factory, they are assigned a VIN, so you know whether the motor number's matching. In this case, anybody want to wager a guess as to whether or not its number's matching? All right, so I know I did right, but the end of this is basically two things, okay? As a technician, we get a lot of training, a lot of tools, okay, to apply our trade, all right? And we need the information. We need the training, we need the tools, to keep these machines in good running order. And if we do not have the support of the ancillary staff, okay, because the people come to get their cars fixed, they don't come to socialize with the service advisor. So while you might have a good conversation game, if it doesn't get relevant information about their car, you're not being helpful to either the customer or to the technician. All right, so now I know there's probably a ton of advisors out there now who may watch this and say, well, if you were a better technician, yes, and I understand that there are technicians out there, even myself sometimes, that we're not at 110% of our potential. But ultimately, there's a failure that starts from the beginning with the information when the vehicle is taken in, and there's failures on the back end when the vehicle is not repaired or diagnosed properly. Okay, the diagnosis for this car would have been simple had the questions, the initial interview, had that gone the way it was supposed to, we wouldn't be here. The customer would not be spending this money trying to find out a problem that a 13-year-old car we know is symptomatic of the codes that we have. So now that I have ranted, I will just put this screen in, put this car back together, write down my recommendations, and move on to the very next interesting headache that I have, but that's for another video. So 12 minutes of your time, hopefully you I don't know, get a little bit better understanding. If you're an advisor, please help your technician by getting as much information as possible. To the technicians out there, just because you've been doing it for a long time doesn't mean you're doing it right. Getting better at your trade every day, constant training, you'll hear it no matter where you go. If you want to be at the top of your game, you got to do that. And for the customer, you kind of need to be a little bit more discerning about the difference. The guy who eats you, talks to you, listens to you, and all that stuff, he's giving information to the guy who's working on your car. If you don't tell him the truth, chances are, if you don't know the truth, tell them you don't know the truth. Okay, they'll go forward with it. That's one thing. But if you don't give them the information they need or try to mislead them, bad things will happen. So thanks for watching. Hope you guys have a good day, and I'm gonna get back to work.